Sometimes the apology comes out before the thought even finishes. Sorry. Sorry, I didn't mean that. Sorry if this sounds weird. Sorry for bothering you. It happens automatically. In conversations, in texts, even in moments where nothing actually went wrong. And on the surface, it can look like kindness, maturity, or emotional intelligence. In American culture, apologizing quickly is often praised as being the bigger person. But for many people, always apologizing first has very little to do with guilt. It's driven by something quieter and deeper. A subtle fear that tension might grow. A need to keep the peace before it turns into conflict. An anxious feeling that if someone is uncomfortable, it must somehow be your fault. For these people, an apology isn't just a word. It's a reflex, a form of emotional self-protection. Because the moment silence appears, or a tone changes, or someone looks slightly annoyed, the nervous system reacts with one message: fix this, now. And the fastest way to do that feels like saying, I'm sorry, even when they don't fully know what they're apologizing for. Over time, this habit starts shaping how a person sees themselves in relationships. Not as an equal participant, but as the one responsible for emotional repair. The one who smooths things over. The one who steps back. The one who absorbs discomfort so others don't have to. And slowly, apologizing first stops being a choice. It becomes an identity. As this pattern continues, the apology often stops reflecting real responsibility. People begin apologizing for things that aren't mistakes at all. For asking questions. For taking up space. For having emotions. For reacting naturally to something that hurt them. In many American households, this behavior starts early. Some people grew up as the peacekeeper, the child who learned that tension was dangerous. Maybe conflict led to yelling, withdrawal, or emotional coldness. Maybe love felt conditional. So they adapted. They learned that being agreeable felt safer than being honest. That calming others down mattered more than expressing their own discomfort. That apologizing first could stop a situation from escalating. What began as a survival skill slowly turned into a default way of relating. Underneath it all is often a false sense of responsibility. The belief that other people's emotions must be managed. That if someone feels upset, it's your job to fix it. This is especially common among people with anxiety. The idea that someone might be disappointed, annoyed, or unhappy creates internal alarm. Apologizing becomes a way to quiet that alarm, even temporarily. But relief doesn't last long. After the apology, a new doubt appears. Was that enough? Do they still seem upset? Should I explain myself more? Should I apologize again? And the mind loops. Over time, something else begins to form beneath the surface. Fatigue. And then resentment. Because while they're always the one repairing the emotional bridge, their own hurt often goes unacknowledged. They swallow irritation. They minimize their needs. They tell themselves it's not a big deal. But the body remembers. And eventually, this imbalance starts affecting relationships. When one person always apologizes first, a quiet dynamic is created. One person becomes the emotional caretaker. The other gets used to being soothed. Not intentionally, not maliciously, but consistently. Boundaries blur. Conversations tilt. Responsibility becomes uneven. And slowly, the person who apologizes first begins to feel smaller in their own life. They start to believe that harmony must be earned through self-blame. That closeness depends on self-erasure. That being loved means being easy. This is where many people begin to sense something is wrong. Not with their relationships, but with how much of themselves they're giving up. And that realization, while uncomfortable, is often the first moment of change. At that point, the question quietly shifts. Not how do I keep the peace, but why am I always the one giving it up? American psychologists often point out that chronic apologizing isn't about manners. It's about fear. Fear of disconnection. Fear of being seen as difficult. Fear of losing closeness if you stand your ground. So the work doesn't begin with stop saying sorry. That usually backfires. It begins with noticing the impulse before the apology leaves your mouth. That split second where tension appears, where the body tightens, where the nervous system signals, "Fix this now." Instead of apologizing automatically, some people learn to pause, to ask internally, "Did I actually do something wrong? Or am I just uncomfortable with the possibility of someone else's discomfort?" This distinction matters, because responsibility and discomfort are not the same thing. Learning this often feels unsettling at first. Silence after a disagreement can feel threatening. Not smoothing things over immediately can trigger anxiety. But over time, something shifts. People discover that relationships don't collapse just because an apology is delayed. That others are capable of taking responsibility too. That conflict doesn't automatically mean rejection. Many therapists suggest practicing new language, not to sound colder, but to sound clearer. Replacing "I'm sorry for feeling this way" with "This is how I feel." Replacing "sorry to bother you" with "Can I ask you something?" Replacing apologies with appreciation or explanation. These changes seem small, but they challenge a deeply held belief that your presence needs permission. As this belief loosens, self-respect starts to rebuild. Not loudly, not all at once, but steadily. People who once apologized first begin to feel something unfamiliar, a sense of balance. They still apologize when they've genuinely hurt someone, but they stop apologizing for existing, for having needs, for taking up emotional space. And that's where relationships often become healthier. Not because there's less conflict, but because responsibility is shared. If you recognize yourself in this pattern, it doesn't mean you're weak. It means you learned a strategy that once kept you safe, and now you're allowed to update it. That's the psychology behind people who always apologize first. Then the work becomes simple, but not easy. It's not about never apologizing again. It's about noticing when sorry is used to erase yourself. That brief pause before you apologize matters, because it creates a choice. With time, many people learn that conflict doesn't destroy connection. That silence doesn't mean rejection. That they don't need to earn their place by taking the blame. They still apologize when they've truly done harm, but they stop apologizing for having needs, feelings, or a voice. And that shift restores balance, quietly but deeply. If you recognize yourself here, nothing is wrong with you. This was once a survival skill. You're just allowed to outgrow it now.